Before we begin today, a brief word of warning. The second episode we are going to be discussing is Elegy, which contains depictions of mental illness and autism. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to Things Are Getting Strange, the X-Files Rewatch podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
And while we don't really have news, I'm going to throw this in because it's funny. So we went to see The Exorcist The Believer yesterday, which is not a great film.
No, well, on the law of averages of Exorcist films, it's actually a fairly good film.
True, but that's because you've got one really good Exorcist film and then there's everything else. Except for 3, which is okay.
No, 3's still dreadful, I just like it.
Okay, that's kind of incidental because before that was for an animated advert which turned out eventually to be for Beavertown Beer. Anyway, the only reason we bring this up is that the narrator skeleton on this plane, because he's on a plane, he's afraid of flying, he's reading a book which is titled From Outer Space, with a picture of what looks like a grey alien on the cover, and I'm pretty sure this is a Jose Chung reference, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, it was quite random.
It also looks like Mulder and Scully is sat behind him at one shot.
Or two skeletons that look a bit like them.
They got the grey suits on, and they got the right kind of hair for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think they're a UK brewery, so whether this is actually going to be available anywhere else in the world is debatable. We'll put a link on Twitter if we find the video of it, because we haven't so far.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be up. Maybe it's just at the movies at the moment.
Yeah. I suppose the other bit of news, or at least vague things we can mention, is Pet Sematary Bloodlines came out on Friday, which features David Duchovny.
It was also trash.
I was going to leave in space before we went to... It's really boring. Anyway, but David Duchovny's character is the reason for everything going wrong in the past of Pet Sematary.
Yeah.
So it's entirely his fault.
The whole movie is a flashback that kind of covers that brief bit where Judd Crandall explains about his first experience with Pet Sematary.
Yeah.
Or rather, not Pet Sematary itself, the Mishmack burial ground. Yeah.
And I think by law of almost all prequels ever, it kind of underscores why the brief bit you mentioned in the first film to set up the backstory to actually have the narrative padding for what's happening in the present to make sense. That's all you needed. You didn't need to expand on it any further than what you already have.
I actually can't even remember if they mention that brief bit in the remake. They certainly do in the original.
I don't think they do,
book.
Actually.
No, I just have in the back of my head that it was a DVD extra or something like that.
I mean, it's a bit like the fashionable thing is to put all of Stephen King's weirdness into the new adaptations. Like, it has a whole load of extra constant reader stuff that the previous It version just cut right out because it's not necessary.
Yeah, true. I think the second part of it, the homophobic attack at the start, is in the book, but it's never been adapted. I think it's, the kind of thing that's only kind of briefly alluded to, but they put it in full.
Yeah, and we're sidling onto it, but that has never read right to me, because the implication I always thought was that basically the homophobic attack would lead to Pennywise awakening, but the homophobic attack happens, then Pennywise is just there beside the river anyway.
I think it's just underscoring, like in the first one, that just Pennywise's presence makes people kind of indifferent in this world.
Yeah, but I kind of like the idea, though, you've triggered him to come back into the world again. You've done something so horrible that has awoken him again.
It's like a sacrifice.
Yeah, and that just doesn't come across in the film, and I don't know if it comes across in the book. Having never read it, but...
No, it's not.
And this is Things Are Getting Strange, rewriting Stephen King. No.
Sorry, we're into Halloween month. I'm just watching tons of horror movies at the moment.
Which is fine. I mean, we're nearly done with Wrong Turn.
Yep, just watching through all my trash box sets, Wrong Turn included.
Yep.
I watched Wishmaster the other day as well. That's not aged well. Well, the first one's still great, but the rest.
And you get Zombieland shortly, so that's fun too.
Yeah.
But I suppose, unless you have anything for newsworthiness.
No, I think that's everything. Let's crack on with Zero Sum.
Okay. So, Zero Sum, directed by Kim Manners, written by Howard Gordon, his last for the series. Oh my god. And Frank Spotnitz. Broadcast on the 27th of April, 1997. The only significant guest star of note who we haven't covered elsewhere, because you get Skinner, you get Cancerman, you get the First Elder in this one, is Fred Keating as Detective Ray Thomas.
Okay.
Who has previously shown up in Millennium, because we're now into the weird era where Millennium is running concurrently with the current series. And he'll show up again in Final Destination, because of course he does.
Okay.
At a postal voting center in Vienna, Virginia, a woman is killed by a swarm of bees in the bathroom while taking a cigarette break. Walter Skinner is directed by a cigarette smoking man to cover up the death by deleting the file from Mulder's computer and cleaning up all evidence at the scene, burning the woman's body in an incinerator and replacing the police's blood sample for the case by impersonating Mulder. As he leaves the police station, Skinner is chased down by Detective Ray Thomas, who believes he is Mulder. Skinner tells him there's nothing on the case warranting his involvement and leaves. Shortly after Skinner arrives home, Mulder arrives, who tells him the case and the fact that someone is going to create lens to cover it up. Mulder reveals that Detective Thomas was killed, which shocks Skinner. Mulder then tells Skinner that Scully is undergoing tests regarding her cancer. Later that night, Skinner meets with Cigarette Smoking Man, who is accompanied by Thomas's murderer, the grey-haired man. Skinner is angry that Thomas was killed and wants to end their arrangement, which Smoking Man refuses to allow. Mulder calls Skinner, telling him about the woman's body being burned and the blood evidence being tampered with. He then tells Skinner that he is trying to match the bullet that killed Thomas to a gun issued to a federal agent or local officer. Skinner realizes his gun is missing and must be the one used for the murder. He realizes it's been set up and calls Cigarette Smoking Man, who confirms that Thomas was killed with Skinner's gun and that by going to the police, Skinner would end up implicating himself. The Cigarette Smoking Man refuses to provide any details on what he is covering up. Skinner returns to the routing center, where he tears a hole in the bathroom wall and finds a large honeycomb of dead bees. He visits an entomologist to look at one of the bees and is told that Mulder visited him 6 months ago about a similar subject. Skinner finds Mulder's file in the matter, copying down the contact information from Marita. Mulder tells Skinner that a bank near the police station took a picture of the detective, which shows him with Skinner, but the picture is too obscured for Mulder to identify him. Skinner calls Marita, who does not have any evidence to provide him at the time. The entomologist is then killed by a swarm of bees. The next day, Mulder and Skinner look at his body, which is infected with smallpox transmitted by the bees. Skinner visits the co-worker of the postal worker who died, who tells him that she was pressured not to say anything about what happened by men who demanded a damaged package. At the photo lab, Mulder analyzes the photo, which reveals Skinner was the person talking to the detective. Cigarette Smoking Man meets with the Syndicate, who are responsible for the bees. Soon afterwards, a swarm of bees attacks a school in Poison, South Carolina, and one of the teachers and several of the students die. Skinner heads to the hospital, where he is met by Marita. She demands to know what he knows about the matter. He tells her he believes the bees are being used as a carrier for some sort of experiment. Skinner is then confronted by Mulder, who now suspects Skinner has been working against him the whole time. Skinner is able to convince Mulder that he would not have forced open his own drawer lock, and hence could not have been the murderer. Convinced of Skinner's evidence, Mulder returns in the gun with the serial number filed off, so Skinner is not blamed for the murder. That night, Skinner confronts the Smoking Man in his apartment, angry that nothing has been done for Scully. The Smoking Man convinces him that Scully will die if he kills him, and Skinner leaves without killing him, but not before firing several warning shots. Shortly afterwards, Marita calls the Smoking Man, who tells her to tell Mulder what he wants to hear, while an unknown man is shown behind her listening on another phone. So we spent ages complaining that basically Scully's cancer is kind of like a side note to this series, and then suddenly, hey, Scully's so debilitated she's not even going to show up in this episode.
Apparently it's because she was just had one episode off to film The Mighty.
Oh, okay. It's interesting though, because it allows Skinner to take the foreground for the first time. Well, kind of Avatar, though that wasn't really a Skinner as much as Skinner
that's
style.
Purely the reason why Howard Gordon was brought on to assist with the writing in this one is he wrote Avatar previously, but the idea was it felt unfair to kind of make David Duchovny carry more of the weight due to Gillian Anderson's absence. So they decided that although Mulder would be in the episode, the main character would be someone entirely different, and they picked Skinner.
Which is cool. Oh, Skinner. I remember the first time I watched this that I had somehow never twigged on the deal being made.
Oh, the deal between Skinner and Cancer Man.
Yeah, somehow I'd completely forgotten that deal had been struck. So Zero Sum always felt really weird to me, because it's Skinner suddenly doing stuff for Cigarette Smoking Man, and I couldn't figure out why.
I see.
Well, that said, I can remember Skinner cleaning up the crime scene, and there being a honeycomb in the wall, and then nothing else about this episode. Nothing at all.
I've got to admit I was much the same, as I remembered the start with the bees, and very little else.
Yeah, and the bee attack also put me very much in mind of Coprophages, bizarrely, just the way they've sort of staged it.
Those bees are so quiet.
The quietest stealth bees in the world. Both times.
It's not like huge swarms of bees make a lot of noise or anything.
Well, they weren't being stealthy when they attacked the playground, were they?
No, true. In the scene that very much was the birds.
Yeah, but with bees. The birds and bees. As much as, I know, we should probably do a conspiracy thing on this, again, I don't know what you're going to do with it in terms of the conspiracy, other than bees are weirdly important.
I don't think it advanced anything. We already know the significance of the bees and that they're carrying the weaponized smallpox.
Yeah, I think this is just the actual confirmation to Mulder and Skinner that that's what's happening.
It's also showing that things are escalating because they're actually doing tests on the disease. They're not just rearing these bees in remote ginseng farms like they were previously.
Yeah.
It's now we're actually coordinating attacks to test this, and the attacks are pretty brutal. I mean, setting them on a school full of little kids.
That just feels like, how do you make the Syndicate seem more villainous than they have done? Well, okay, those kids are for it.
It's fair enough. The postal worker, it appears, is entirely an accident, though I don't know why you'd be sending vast amounts of bees through the post either.
No. I mean, the implication is that it was a damaged package and it broke open, and that's why the larvae got into the wall and built their honeycomb.
I'm gonna go on my knowledge of insects, which is actually fairly expensive as I keep insects, is that's not really how you kind of ship insects either.
No.
Not to mention, admittedly, these are kind of sci-fi bees, but, kind of colony-based insects can't just build up of nothing. You need so many workers and a queen just to start them off.
Yeah. I don't think anyone did huge amounts of research for this one, it must be said.
No. The only bit that I will applaud them for accuracy is when Skinner takes the honeycomb to the entomologist and he kind of says, well, we'll have no idea what these pupa are until they hatch. Absolutely true.
Yeah.
It's larval stages and indeed pupa are often really hard to distinguish, especially in things like bees and beetles where a lot of them look the same until they hatch out.
We do have to question, are these bees magic? Because Skinner turns up with a smallish chunk of honeycomb, and there's enough bees to blanket an entire room after they have.
Yeah, no way in hell.
It's a nice dramatic thing, and it's good that you're connecting back to Tal Takumi finally.
It's also the amount of honey that hive is producing. Enough to seep through walls and ceiling. That's not a healthy hive. That's the reason people harvest honey and things like that. Is that essentially, if not harvested, the hive will eventually become unlivable, and the bees will just swarm and go elsewhere.
Yeah, and you can kind of see that might be what they're trying to gesture at with the death at the start. It just feels really coincidental. It was on her
just
cigarette
her
break.
Little cigarette break. Yeah.
And as you said, the fact they're so well behaved and crawl out of the taps and everything else and just
silently. As if you get one bee stuck in a room with you, you know about it.
Yes, they're not subtle creatures, are they?
I can't imagine how much noise it would be to have an entire swarm in a confined space like that bathroom or the entomologist's room.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is one of these. I don't know if we have to accept it or it's being implied is that these are not normal bees. On top of the fact they're carrying smallpox, the fact you can set them on a target as they seem to have done, and the fact they're just stinging indiscriminately, which is not how bees do it, I understand.
That's actually a misnomer because, of course, killer bees and all the rest of it.
And bees and wasps actually, you get some of both types, don't you?
It does, however, seem that these are honeybees because they extract a load of stingers from the woman's corpse.
Yeah.
Which infers that they are the species of bee that will die if they sting you.
Yeah.
Yet we don't find tons and tons of bee corpses around, apparently.
No, and also, again, you need to provoke honeybees normally, don't you? They don't just go and attack you.
Oh, our standard European kind of honeybees just are docile as. You have to go out of your way because an animal that will die if it defends itself isn't going to want to defend itself unless it has to.
Yeah, so it's last resort kind of thing. But these are just sort of going for the kids, going for the postal worker.
Well, it does compare them to killer bees in the episode, which are incredibly, incredibly aggressive, as the name suggests.
Yeah. It's an odd one. I mean, I don't know if it's a mismatch between the ones you're using for the close-ups and the actual behaviour, or you are trying to imply weird alien stuff going on, or whatever's going on with the Syndicate.
They clearly are honeybees, from just looking at them close-up and from the kind of style of their hive with the comb soaked in honey and all the rest of it. But I guess we've got to just suspend disbelief and kind of say they're science fiction bees that are super aggressive, produce honey, and will also can sting you, lose their stinger, and somehow not die.
Yeah, well, or go off and die somewhere else conveniently off screen.
Otherwise, I think Skinner would have had to do more covering up if she was just lying in a pile of dead bees.
Yeah. It is odd. Well, I suppose it's been a very quick thing, but I mean, it's good. again, it's nice. It is nice to see Skinner in a starring role, and it's interesting to sort of see what would go into this kind of cover-up and the lengths he has to go to. I do feel it's, as much as this is Cigarette Smoker Man making him dance to his own tune, would you actually send one person to do all this, given the amount of stuff he actually needs to cover up and how important it is to cover this up? This isn't a minor thing they're doing.
Well, technically they haven't sent one guy because grey-haired man's watching him the whole time.
That's true. But like, if that detective hadn't sort of run after Agent Mulder, in quotes, there's a good chance to still be alive.
Yeah, true.
I do like... Again, this is something that came up in Tunguska. And it's the fatal flaw in the conspiracy always seems to be you can't control everything. Because this package was damaged en route, put into this warehouse, or into this storage room, and the bees got out. And on top of that, you've got, as much as Skinner's been told to delete all the evidence before it gets to Mulder, Mulder's then forwarded a copy of the photos anyway because this detective has been found dead. It does... I don't know if it's an intentional thing or it's meant to imply that ultimately the conspiracy will fail, but they can't cover every contingency, even though they seem to.
No, that's fair.
I would say one weird comment is Skinner disposes of the postal worker's body.
Yeah.
Which is fine. It just feels like he goes to an awful lot of effort, given that the guy in Never Again shoved the bodies into the furnace of his building. Where Skinner has to go to, I don't know what that place is.
Some kind of factory.
Yeah, take it down in the lift, then climb up some more stairs. That's a bit weird, Skinner. And then shove her into an oven.
I guess they want to be sure she's not going to be found.
That's true, but I'm sure there must be somewhere closer.
I did kind of like the lengths he went to be fair, with things like swapping over the blood samples, which didn't work due to a random plot contrivance.
Yeah.
But...
I'm saying, this is kind of like the inverse of how the X-Files normally works, is that Mulder's always one step ahead of Skinner through this entire episode, and usually it's the other way round.
Yeah, I thought it was quite ingenious when Mulder kind of said, oh, yeah, the samples were swapped, and Skinner's like, how the hell do you know this, man? She had some kind of unusual form of anemia or whatever it was.
Yeah. It's kind of like putting Skinner into Mulder's position weirdly, but then, Mulder, you've never been in this position of confidence before. This is weird.
Yeah.
Weird and strange. Also, when you tell Scully about this later, what are you going to tell her? Scully, there's killer bees. Like those ones I saw on the farm with Jeremiah Smith, who I noticed you've never asked about since.
There's nothing like a deadly bee weapon.
Bees, my god. Thank you, Linkara.
The one it always makes me think of is the Wicker Man remake with not the bees are in my eyes.
The weirdest thing about that is, and I think Nostalgia Critic really got into it, is that's not on the cinema version, that's DVD only.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, so basically that didn't go to the cinema, the bees are in my eyes bit. The most famous part of the film. Well, I don't know, brilliant line. It's certainly memorable.
Anything Nick Cage ever does is magnificent.
That's true. So if you want to watch Five Nights at Freddy's before it comes out, which I think we just about skimmed past, watch Willy's Wonderland, which is the same thing, but with Nicolas Cage refusing to say a word for an hour and a half.
While he fights Chuck E. Cheese animatronics.
And cleans.
And cleans very well.
Anyway, speaking of cleaning, again, that's an interesting part of the whole cover-up thing, which you don't really expect. That Skinner is scrubbing a bathroom floor in the middle of the night to get rid of blood? Or is it what? I'm not sure what he is cleaning up there.
No, that's true. He kind of disposes of the cigarette.
Yeah, which I don't know why you'd go that far on the grounds that...
How do you contract smallpox? Could there be something on there?
There could be, but again, we have got that point that the doctor makes of even if these people are infected with smallpox, the incubation rate is not that fast. This is turbo smallpox.
We already know it's turbo smallpox from...
Herrenvolk.
Oh, Herrenvolk, yeah.
Yeah.
Because, we see that guy who's stung and immediately starts kind of getting the welts.
No children or damn people here, though.
I've got to admit, I kind of both liked and was horrified by that sequence in the hospital. I'm sure, it feels in hindsight realistic of the doctor immediately dismissing a disease that's been largely eradicated.
Yeah.
But at the same time, these little kids are dying. If someone had suggested this, wouldn't you test for it?
You possibly. I mean, it's possible they don't have the capacity to test for it anymore either. The disease has been officially eradicated. I mean, I think in 1997, this was when you start to get the idea of smallpox being a problem in the future coming into media again. Because there was a whole, there was some Channel 4 program, I think, about someone who's deliberately spreading smallpox into the population and what that would look like.
Yes, it was, I can't remember the name of the actual thing, I watched it. It was done as a kind of documentary as though this had actually happened.
Yeah.
And it was essentially a terrorist who infected himself with smallpox and then crawled into a corner of the London Tube and died. So essentially, while his body remained unfound, every train that passed by, he was infecting people on it.
Yeah.
And it was basically the fact that the world does have vaccines and kind of cures for smallpox, but they're in such small quantities that if there was a major outbreak of it, they wouldn't be able to react in time.
Yeah. So I think this is around the same time we started getting that worry about it.
It was the idea of these kind of eradicated diseases, and I guess as we saw with things like SARS and COVID as well, is that the amount of time it takes to produce a viable vaccine isn't as fast as you would like it to be.
No, and that was a big thing in the Second World War as well with the development with penicillin. As the biggest problem they were having with that was just the amount of time it takes for the mold to grow for you to harvest it.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones where you are, as a doctor, going to be suspicious that this guy's come in and said this long dead disease has infected all these people somehow.
Yeah.
Who were attacked by bees, and you're not going to believe him. At the same time, yeah, he did try to help.
From your kind of house sense, though, could you kind of say, when he was saying, oh, the incubation's 8 weeks, it's like the bee attacks are relevant, they could have contracted it before this.
Yeah, he could have said that. Whatever reason, Skinner didn't think of that one.
Yeah, Skinner just has to give a viable excuse for why this could be smallpox.
Yeah, I think the thing is that Skinner's off balance this entire episode. He's done the bad thing, and he's trying desperately to not let it come crashing down on him. One thing, and we're going to go in on it again, because we've done it a few times, is what is up with Marita? I don't get her. I mean, it's one of the things where you remember Deep Throat, and you remember X really vividly from previous watching the X-Files. Marita, I can only remember some future stuff with her, which we're going to have to get into much further down the line when that comes into play. She kind of just shows up in episodes and has been a glorified travel agent, and now we know she's an active traitor.
I think part of my problem is I don't think... It's not that she's a bad actress, because, I've seen her in things like The Mist where she's very, very good.
Yeah.
But I think she's just abysmally written.
Yes. Well, I'd say that put me in mind of Peter Capaldi in that series of Doctor Who. How everyone said, this guy's a fantastic actor. This is atrocious. You're giving him crap to work with.
Yeah. Is that even if you're a great actor, if you're given just crap, like you say, there's very little you can do about it.
There's a finite amount of stuff you can do with it.
But I have such problems with Marita, and it's probably unintentional, but it's the idea of this is the first female informant we've got. We had Deep Throat and X, who were massively competent, massively skilled, there to help Mulder, and then you get the first woman and she's the traitor.
Yep. I mean, and well, X was going to have that weird middle ground. I don't think it's a good thing to speculate. I mean, it doesn't do us any good, but you kind of worry if X hadn't been recast, how X would have turned out had they been kept as a woman.
I think given that X is so hands-on, if X had remained a woman, he would have been very different.
Yeah.
Or she would have been very different, rather.
But the thing that really gets me about Marita is not just that we've got the point blank, yeah, she's working for Circus Smoker Man, and she's going to feed whatever he wants whatever Mulder wants to hear fed back to him, which is like the worst behaviours of Deep Throat and X, who have done this to Mulder, but that was only when they were trying to steer him away from something.
Mm.
The real problem I've got with her is X, while he was dying, while his last breath, he crawled down Mulder's hallway and wrote in blood SRSG on Mulder's floor. That was the point to point Mulder towards Marita, to actually get in contact with her. This is X's dying thing, and X apparently has just pointed him towards another person who's just going to betray Mulder at the first opportunity.
You're not thinking that this could be like the study in Scarlet and actually we've misinterpreted what X was writing on the ground?
It is possible. I mean, SRSG is extremely oblique. I remember watching that episode at the time and going, well, that's not helpful. And then you see the letters on the side of the United Nations thing when he meets her for the first time and says, oh, okay.
Well, obviously, Mulder, it's not Rachel. He's writing the German word for revenge, or whatever study in Scarlet's explanation was.
Yeah. At the same time, though, if he has misinterpreted it, it's a hell of a coincidence for Mulder to have plucked out the one member of the UN who has actually got a direct line to Cancer Man and could therefore actually answer some of these questions. It does also mean that every time she said, I have no idea what's going on, but I can book you a plane ticket, is, yeah, you were lying. Did you sell Mulder out in Tunguska? Is that why Cigarette Smoking Man knows he was in Russia?
It could well be.
Wow, she's just callous, isn't she?
Krychek hates Cigarette Smoking Man, so he's not going to sell him out.
True. But again, and I don't know, I think it's just Marita's just used for shock value in this episode because she shows up and those first few appearances where she's talking to Skinner, she seems to be on the level with the whole, you need to tell me what's going on, you need to hand yourself into the police or whatever. And then just for her to ring up Cigarette Smoking Man at the end and say, oh yeah, just tell Mulder whatever he wants to hear. What? I don't think, it's not good shock, is it?
No.
Because, again, I think it comes back to your point about the lack of competence is we haven't given any reason to think Marita is remotely useful.
With Mr. X and with Deep Throat as well, they were in very deep. They knew what they were doing, and they were very clever with how they gave that information to Mulder. Particularly X when he was trying to protect himself the entire time, so it's only feeding as much as he could.
No, yeah, from what you were saying, Deep Throat and X were also paranoid.
Mm.
Like, Deep Throat kind of varied depending on which episode you're in, but there's the one where basically tourists are taking photos of something, and he sort of just hunches over to make sure he's not photographed.
Yeah.
At an absolute absurd level. And X, who would only show up in darkened parking lots or, if he taped the X to his window. Whereas Marita just wanders around in broad daylight and just says, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, that is true. It's not exactly what I was getting at, but still true. I was going to go with more that the fact that X and Deep Throat, although they did both kind of come undone at the end, were in control of the situations and had some level of power in different echelons of this kind of organisation, the Syndicate. Marita's a pawn.
Yes.
Marita has no agency. It's unclear how much Marita actually does know, because Marita just does as she's told.
Yeah, there's that too. I think the other thing, and you've hit on there, is I got the impression, no matter how either of them acted, Deep Throat and X liked Mulder. Because X rescues Mulder in 731. If he's playing how he claims he's playing things, he would absolutely have left Mulder on that train. But he didn't. He actually sort of dragged him to a nearby hospital. And
Deep Throat in EBE stops that kind of security unit from doing Mulder in.
Yeah, and also makes the trade for Mulder in Illuminae and Flask.
Yeah.
I'm going to go on a limb here. I don't believe for a second Marita would ever help Mulder in these situations.
No.
She'd say, oh, well, okay.
But nor would she need to, because she's not on the level.
No. But I don't think she likes him either. Because there's always... She's very frosty with him every time.
I imagine that's part of the cover, though.
Yeah. At the same time, Mulder did actually make this point on, the Antilico, I think. Of, you gave me the impression that you were going to be my contact now. And we just kind of, I don't know where you got that idea from.
Well, to be fair, she never gave him that impression that she was going to do it.
I don't like Marita. I think the other thing, and I know it's a slight spoiler for future, but we know that she's the last contact. He's not getting any other one. This is it. This is the last time he's going to have one of these. And unfortunately, it's Marita.
True.
What would give for another X? Hey, the Syndicate are back.
Well, they haven't really gone anywhere.
They haven't gone anywhere, but they haven't done anything much for a while.
They never do much.
I know. It is one of these problems of being so hands off that basically they just meet in this one room in New York and everything happens elsewhere. One thing that is becoming increasingly sort of almost comedic is they don't like Cigarette Smoking Man. They don't trust Cigarette Smoking Man, but they keep making him do everything. Because, is this all the bees accounted for? Yes. How about the test? Oh, it's on the works. Do you have other agents? This man would betray you in a second. He was ready to quit and go off and write novels for the rest of his days. Maybe.
I think it's not trust, is they know Cigarette Smoking Man is working towards their ends. The reason for not trusting him is the fact that if he messes up, he will also do whatever he can to cover his own back. But probably valid as well, because they'll have him killed if he makes a mistake.
Yes. Well, they also do know he's lied repeatedly to them. I think Well-Manicured Man has a number of instances where Mulder has sort of countermanded something that Cigarette Smoker Man told them. It's kind of odd he's the one who's missing this time.
What, manicured?
Yeah, because we got First Elder in there and the other second... I don't know if he's second elder, just the other guy you always see in Syndicate scenes.
I don't know if he has a name, to be honest.
No, I don't think he does either. I still think First Elder's a weird one anyway, because we're just assuming he's in charge.
Mm. But why doesn't the well-manicured man have a number?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I do wonder... We know that Cigarette Smoker Man is how he was referred to in the script. Or at least when... But the novelization has given him an agent name because of that very weird inconsistency in the novelization of the pilot episode.
Okay. Oh, yeah, of course, I remember.
Yeah. But I do wonder how much the names are fan creations, because it was a thing that the internet was coming into prominence while the X-Files was going, so there were increasing X-Files message boards and people sort of communicating. And how much of this got back to the creators of this is how the fans see these characters, and they've adopted the names into, context.
If you were a fan, though, and you were going to name Well-Manicured Man, what would you hit on? I don't think his well-manicuredness is the first thing that drives your attention when he's the only British member of the group and things like that.
I was going to say, I suspect that Well-Manicured Man is Chris Carter's name for him. I think First Elder is a fan name. Because, again, it breaks the pattern. True.
It's not a vague descriptor on their personal appearance like most of the assassins are.
Yeah, so we're going to call him, mafiosa guy. I know we debated this before because we thought he kind of looks like a mafia guy.
It's a bit more on the nose, but something like heavy-set man.
Yeah.
You go for the description of. You can't really go with his hair colour because he's just got dark hair.
Dark-haired man. Which one? They've all got dark hair. Getting back to Skinner, though, I think... I know Mulder can't ever get to it, but I think this episode of any should clue the audience in from now on that Skinner is on Mulder's side.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if that's going to hold true or we're going to be expected to believe that Skinner is a traitor again, because we've had that a few times now. But Skinner is definitely on Mulder's side, and Mulder kind of accepts it, but also kind of doesn't.
I think Mulder's more accepting when Skinner admits that he's only done this to save Scully.
Yeah. Well, also the logic of, I'm not going to force my own desk drawer open to get my gun out.
Yeah.
Unless you are thinking four-dimensional chess ahead of making it look like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, as a general rule, it's a very stupid thing to do.
To be fair, it seems weak for a Syndicate assassin to have to force the door open.
Yeah, I mean...
It can't be that complicated a lot.
It's a desk drawer. They're not notorious for security, are they? It probably should have come up in Tunguska, but I wasn't thinking about it at the time. But that happy reconciliation with his wife at the end of Avatar just has not panned out, has it?
No, it looks like he's still forever alone.
Yeah. Also, he's moved from the apartment he had in Avatar, because that was a new place.
Well, that's understandable, really.
Well, fair.
All the bad things that have happened to Skinner's apartment now. There was that guy who got hurled off the balcony by Kryjik.
Yeah, but this is the same one as that.
Oh, we're still in that one?
Yeah, we're not in the one from Avatar.
Oh, we're not in the one from Avatar.
Yeah.
To be fair, I'd move after Avatar too.
Well, I would have thought so, yeah. Because you had a guy break into your apartment as well. Guy thrown off the balcony.
Skinner's still kind of experiencing all these supernatural phenomenon as well. With now he's seen the bees too.
Yeah.
I guess they're less supernatural than the succubus or whatever it was in Avatar.
Yeah, and his out-of-body experience, and yeah, he didn't mention that to anyone.
Not to mention those were-rats.
Oh, I wanted were-rats.
It's a shame that the short stories are non-canonical.
Well, yeah. Do we have anything else for this episode? Because I think it's a weird one where it feels like it should be really important, but at the same time, you're only getting scraps of detail for the conspiracy from it.
Yeah, I want to like this episode more than I do because I really like Skinner as a character and I feel he's underused. It's just, Beescaption aside, a kind of a bit bland.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like an X-File two-parter smushed into one, so it's a case of you're trying to both give the audience too much information and claw it back at the same time, and you're left in this kind of weird, yeah, the bees have got smallpox, but we knew that. All that's changed is the characters know that.
I think all you can say, which is why I'm not going to do my conspiracy corner for this, is the fact that whatever our plan is for the smallpox bees is escalating.
Yes.
Because we've moved on to from breeding bees to, like, beta tests now.
Yeah. And weirdly being able to control the bees is the implication as well, which feels more advanced than you'd think they'd be at.
Oh, I do have a small gripe, and it's just popped into my head again, is I think it's Mulder mentions it and calls smallpox the deadliest disease known to man.
Oh, yes.
It's not. I just want to put out there that it's the 4th deadliest disease known to man.
Oh, I remember you saying it was the 8th, but yeah. But okay, what's number 1?
The bubonic plague.
Which makes sense. Yeah, a few things have got that bad.
2nd is influenza.
Yep, it's the one that no one thinks of because it's so common.
But back in the old days, things like the Spanish flu killed thousands. And cholera is 3rd. Again, another disease that killed many, many hundreds of thousands of people until it was largely eradicated.
Yeah.
But those are the biggest killers in history. Although I think influenza is the only one that still occasionally rears its head in this day and age, because we've got really effective medicines for the plague now.
Yep.
Cholera basically doesn't exist in the first world at all, and again has cures. And smallpox, as we've seen, has basically been eradicated.
Yeah, I do know a bit about this, and it's because influenza is constantly mutating. Because you can make a vaccine for it, but
that's why there's a new vaccine every winter.
Yeah. And even then, it's only for people who are actually vulnerable that they bother with it.
Yeah, it's a horrible disease, though. I've only had the flu once in my life, and it makes me, every time someone says, oh, I had the day off work because I had a touch of the flu.
It's like, no, you didn't.
No, you didn't. It laid me out for almost a month.
Yeah. I thankfully have never had it, but yeah, I don't think I want it.
Yeah, it's nothing like the cold. And no matter what people wanting a day off work seem to think.
Just say you have a cold, it's fine. Okay. So, are you ready to get depressed? Whoa.
Oh, bring it on.
So, second episode, we have Elegy, directed by James Charlson, written by John Shaban.
Look, he does sometimes write good things. You just have a grudge against him.
Well, I know, it's just, he writes the creators, though, doesn't he?
You've still got Battler to come.
I still got Battler to... Oh, my God. I always forget Battler happens. Oh. There's a treat for Season 8. First broadcast on the 4th of May, 1997. Guest stars. These are quite fun.
Okay.
So, we have Sidney Lassick, who played Chuck Forsh, whose first interesting film role was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, somewhat appropriately.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was also in History of the World Part 1, which is the Mel Brooks very strange film.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Very interestingly, I thought, though, was he was in Don't Tell Mum the Babysitter's Dead. A film I've only ever seen bits of, but I know features David Duchovny in a very early role.
Ah.
It also, bizarrely, has Gimme Some Money by Spinal Tap on the soundtrack. Which, it just flummoxed me the first time I heard it. It's you've used that as an actual track in your film? I mean, yeah, I know it's technically a real song, but wow, that's weird.
Bless you.
And he was in Sister Act 2.
Okay.
He has now passed on, unfortunately.
Oh.
The other guest of note is Lorena Gale, who played the attorney.
Oh, I think I know she was in One Breath previously.
Yes. She was also in The Fly 2.
Ah.
Halloween Resurrection. Chronicles of Riddick.
Yeah.
Slither.
Oh, I like Slither.
And we'll see her again in X-Files I Want to Believe.
Ah.
The other person of note, and I can never remember if we've actually sort of handled her properly, is Kristin Wills as Karen Kossoff, the psychiatrist that Scully talks to briefly.
Oh, yeah, she's been in a few episodes now.
Yeah. And most of them, that's the same character, and one of them, she's someone else.
I think it's Kalushari, maybe? She's someone different?
Yeah, and then every other time...
Because she's like the child welfare officer in that.
Yeah. And it's one of the weird ones where if you're paying attention, you go, didn't you have a different job a second ago?
Yeah. She's always the same psychiatrist that Scully sees, though.
Yeah. It's not like Detective Manders, who is usually a police officer and sometimes a domestic terrorist.
Yeah.
So, would you like to give us a synopsis for Elegy?
Yes, I would. Our episode this time opens in a bowling alley where we see Angie Pintero telling one of his employees, a man with autism whose name is Harold Spuler, to go home for the evening. Shortly afterwards, Angie notices that one of the lanes is malfunctioning, and when he peers inside it, he sees a badly injured blonde girl wedged inside of the automated pin setter. Although the girl is attempting to speak, he can't hear what she's saying. Angie notices that there is a police car parked outside and rushes out to get help. He realises that a crowd has gathered around the dead body of the same girl he saw moments earlier inside the bowling alley. Naturally, Mulder is interested in this case, as he suspects that Angie encountered the dead girl's ghost. Apparently there have been 3 similar cases and 3 similar murders in the same area in as many weeks. As Mulder examines the bowling lane, he discovers the words, "She is me," etched into the spot where Angie saw the spirit. What these words were means nothing to anyone. Detective Hudak tells Mulder and Scully that they received a call from an anonymous caller with a message regarding Penny Timmons, who was one of the killer's victims. The caller claimed that Timmons' last words were "she is me," but Hudak notes that this was impossible, as the victim's larynx had been severed and therefore she couldn't have said anything. The agents managed to trace the call to a payphone at the New Horizon Psychiatric Centre. Mulder notices when he questions the patients there that one of them, Harold Spuller, avoids his gaze. After looking into the murder victims, Scully comes to the conclusion that Spuller fits the killer's profile, a compulsive person who has been consumed by the desire to organise, clean and reorder. As Scully has another nosebleed, she heads over to the restroom, but there encounters the apparition of another young blonde girl. Moments later, Mulder tells her that the body of another victim has been found nearby, and Scully quickly realises that it's the same girl she saw as an apparition. Scully suddenly feels very concerned about her nosebleed, but tells Mulder to keep working the case while she goes to check it out. In the meantime, we see that Harold is also seeing apparitions of all the young women who were recently murdered. After Scully has had her nosebleed checked and has been assured that it's okay, she makes an appointment with her FBI psychiatrist, with whom she confides that she has come to rely on Mulder far more than she ever realised, and finds him to be a source of her strength. Meanwhile, Mulder takes Harold to the police station for questioning, and during his interrogation, makes a connection between long strings of numbers that Harold can recall on command to the bowling alley. With Hudak and Harold's attorney, Harold leads Mulder to a back room that's accessible from the bowling alley. The walls of this room are covered with score sheets, including those of the victims, and the strings of numbers that Harold can recall are revealed to be their scores for their games. Mulder realises that Harold met each of the murdered women at the bowling alley, but Harold becomes very upset, and from his point of view, we see that Angie's ghost is standing behind Mulder. Harold rushes out of the room and makes his way to the bowling alley, where Angie lies dead from a fatal heart attack. Mulder asks Scully to examine Harold, because every person who saw the apparitions was dying or about to die, which implies Harold might be next. Of course, Mulder says this, not realising that Scully also saw an apparition. Mulder also believes that Harold formed some kind of profound connection to his victims, but was unable to express his feelings due to his autism, so therefore still has a kind of psychic connection between him and the murdered women. As Harold is escorted back to the psychiatric centre, we see that he is tormented by Nurse Innes, who is a really nasty bully who seems to particularly hate Harold. Later, Mulder finds Innes lying injured on the floor. She claims that Harold went berserk and attacked her. However, Scully interviews Chuck Forsh, Harold's roommate, who tells her that Nurse Innes warned Harold that she was poisoning his meds, which potentially means that Harold has not been taking his medication. Scully also realises that Innes is probably the one responsible for the murders. As she acts on this belief, Innes attacks her with a scalpel, and Scully draws her weapon and fires, injuring Innes in her shoulder. As Scully summarises the case for Mulder, she explains that Innes had actually been stealing Harold's unused medication, the stuff that she told him was poisoned, and taking it herself. The side effect of this was a violent and unpredictable behaviour. Scully believes that Innes, out of rage for the fact that her husband had left her for a younger woman, had committed murders in order to destroy happiness and the innocent affection that Harold felt towards similar young women. Shortly afterwards, Harold's body is discovered in a nearby alley, the apparent victim of respiratory failure. Scully, however, suspects that Harold died due to what Innes took away from him. Scully then admits to Mulder that she saw the ghost of the 4th victim shortly after she was murdered, and the two have a short and very intense discussion about the fear that they both share. Later, Scully sees Harold's spirit sitting in the back seat of her car.
Thank you. Wow, 2 for 2 on Scully cancer stuff.
Yeah. We can tell we're ramping up towards an end of a season, I think.
Yeah, well, we know next week is it. On that note, if people can let us know what your best and worst episodes of the season are, we want to get a barometer of what people liked or didn't like about the season.
Yeah, I'm curious for this one. I think there are going to be some skews.
Yeah, some weird choices. I think from your summary, the one thing that jumped out to me of something we never got an explanation for at all is the "she is me" phrase.
They do touch on it at the very end, actually. It's Mulder. I can't remember how exactly he justifies it, but it's something towards Ines' MO
Okay.
at the end. Is, she's kind of, it's her kind of personification of herself in these young women or something like that. It didn't entirely make sense to me when he said it, I must admit, but the explanation was there.
Okay. So I'm going to make that worse, unfortunately. So that's fine, and that accounts for the blood on the mirror and everything. Why did she carve it into the lane of a bowling alley?
Pass.
I mean, I get that the one that Scully sees in the mirror is possibly illusionary because it vanishes between takes, between shots and everything. But Mulder quite definitely sees it carved into the bowling lane when he pours the Coke on over the surface, hoping for it to stick to blood, and it doesn't.
I'll go with, we talk a lot in this episode about psychic connections and things, if it's some kind of psychic phenomena.
Yeah. We also talk about the whole episodes being written halfway and not everything being sort of corrected for that rewrite, which I don't think we've got any notes on the production of this one being kind of torturous or anything, but that feels a weird after effect of something.
No, the one thing I know about the kind of inspiration behind this episode is kind of interesting, though, and very, very personal to John Shiban.
Okay.
It's all based on an experience he had. And sorry, I'm not clear because the article I read went both ways. It was either his father or his father-in-law, who was very close to death and was hospitalised. And so he went with his wife to speak with him one last time. And although they were the only ones in the room with the father, he was looking all around like he was looking at other people, and eventually stopped them and said, "Who are all these other people standing with you?" Which, really, really kind of scared John Shiban somewhat because they were alone in the room.
Yeah, because that's understandably creepy.
And so he got this idea in his head that maybe when people are on the absolute verge of death, they can kind of see through the veil and they're kind of seeing into the next life or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is the basis of this episode, and people who are close to death having visions of dead people.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting as well, though, that as much as we sort of said Scully's cancer being switched on, switched off, we've got it switched on for 2 episodes here, is that implication that the episodes leave with is the reason why Scully is seeing the shades at all, is that she's not got long left.
We already knew that she was terminal, but it was one of these cases where her tumour wasn't very fast growing and they couldn't really say how much time she had.
Yeah, and now we've got an implicit countdown. We don't know when that's counting down to, though the end of the season makes sense.
Yeah.
To resolve one way or the other, and whether Cancer Man is going to swoop in and do anything at all.
If he can. The last episode kind of inferred the fact that he can't actually do anything, but he's kind of stringing Skinner along.
True, although we didn't actually touch on it in the last episode, stupidly, but I did find it interesting that, again, Cancer Man makes that point of liking Scully, and that's why she was given back to Mulder.
Mm.
There's also a possible implicit implication that the Guardian Angel was somehow arranged by him.
Is that what you think?
Well, I don't know if that's intended or not, but it's the way that One Breath framed it is that she was given back and she was basically terminal, and had the Guardian Angel not done whatever she had done, Scully would be doomed. And if Secret Smoker Man is telling the truth about liking Scully, it'd be very odd for him to just dump Scully back in a hospital so Mulder can see her one last time and not do anything for her.
But Scully's condition is kind of one of a kind because people are returned all the time and they don't die on the spot like Scully was doing.
It's true. She's had something weird happen to her.
Yeah, or she's had a bad reaction to something. Or...
Yeah.
I still think that the Guardian Angel is something spiritual because, Scully's faith is a big part of her character, and from what we've seen in the X-Files, it's highly likely that there is some kind of truth behind these kind of Catholic ideas.
Oh yeah, and it's the only way to explain her father actually showing up into the series.
And things like Revelation.
Yeah. It's just at the same time, I mean, we could get into it. I'm sure there'd be an opportunity to get into, why was Scully returned in that state when the MUFON lot were apparently fine up until the point they noticed they had a chip in her neck?
I know it's just the sake of plotting, but at the same time, you're thinking that bodies are strange things and people react to stress and illness differently. So maybe they had a better immune system than Scully or something like that.
It's possible. we're trying to avoid the depressing episode. I noticed because
This episode makes me really sad.
it is it is one of the most downer episodes I think we've had.
Got to admit, some of the episodes, like Zero Sum, I didn't remember well at all. I remembered Elegy vividly, just because every time I see it, it makes me feel so sad.
It is just bleak.
And how
in a way.
bad I feel for poor abused Harold throughout the
Yes.
whole thing.
It's I think you actually made the connection to Roland, and it's interesting this isn't the same writer.
It's not the same writer, and interestingly for Roland is, we knew that Roland suffers from some kind of developmental delay or something like that, but we're very careful in the episode not to say he's autistic.
Yeah.
Even though, like Harold, he shows the kind of very stereotypical Raymond savantism.
Yeah.
Harold, we expressively do say is autistic, along with a whole litany of other things. And that, I know, has kind of upset some reviewers in the past and things like that this is a very stereotypical look of what being autistic is like. And we all know that autism is a spectrum, and not everybody, in fact, very, very few people, are the kind of Rayman savant.
Yeah, and it's also possible to make the claim that Harold basically exists in this context specifically to provoke that emotional response from the audience, to make you feel really upset, much like Roland was.
It's the kind of House effect in my head. In House, you often have the solution to what's making people ill is very simple. So he will do something to stop that person from communicating what's wrong to you.
Yeah.
So it'll be a child, it'll be someone who's autistic, it's somebody who's had head trauma and can't speak. This is what we've got here of somebody who has intense feelings, as it puts in the episode, but can't voice what's happening and can't explain himself.
Yeah.
Because he's being overstimulated the whole time. So his autism is just a plot device to mean that we can't solve this problem of the nurse did it within the first 4 minutes of the episode.
Yeah. And, I mean, I know we disagreed on this one of it still feels weird to me, and I know there are reasons for it, the fact that she is in the episode so little before the turn. And it does basically come out of nowhere.
I think I go on the basis, I agree with you, she could appear more, but at the same time this is caregiver abuse, and caregiver abuse is subtle.
It's true.
Because if it wasn't, they wouldn't get away with it. So I like the fact that it's not until we kind of see Harold alone with Nurse Innes from kind of Harold's perspective is you realise that she's the abuser and more than likely the killer.
Yeah. You would think, though, that maybe they'd sort of direct her to sneer less in the other shots, because whenever you see it catch from the background of a shot, she is basically sneering.
Yeah.
Because you need to be a little bit more subtle. Just a touch. Going on from your other point, though, about her motive and everything, it's not the best, is it?
I think you've got to go on the fact it's exacerbated by the fact she's taking this medication that's making her more aggressive.
Yeah, but I do feel from... As someone who's watching this who isn't on medication, you kind of want more of a reason for her to do what she's doing. Mm. It's very much like the old very kind of older kind of thing of she's just on drugs, ergo then you don't need to explain any further.
There's more explanation. She's on drugs. Her husband's left her for a younger woman, and she hates her job.
Yeah.
And more specifically, she hates dealing with these people who have such severe kind of mental health issues that they can't care for themselves.
Yeah. Though you do want to say at that point, have you considered going to a guidance counsellor?
Just any other job.
Any other job.
It must be a trying job, though, having something like that.
Well, yes. I mean, your sister works in not dissimilar capacity.
Yeah, she's a nurse at a care home.
And we've both talked about this before and said, we could not do this. We would not want to do it. We couldn't do it.
You need a certain level of empathy and a kind of certain strength of character to be able to do this sort of thing every day and not have it completely drag you down.
And I know in the real world, there are instances where bullies will seek out kind of nursing positions and things like, school bullies or people who like to inflict pain and misery on people will get into this position of power to keep doing that. But that's not how she's framed either. No. It's not like she's always been like this. So it's as you said.
I think it's a lot for your similarities with One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest is she's our Nurse Ratched.
So, and again, Nurse Innes doesn't sort of feel she describes to that one either, does she?
No.
She's
not a disciplinarian like Nurse Ratched is.
No, I mean, I think that's coming back to the operative point is John Shaban wanted to write One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Mm. but didn't actually want to write one for the Cuckoo's Nest.
And doesn't really have an understanding about mental illness beyond obvious stereotypes.
No, and as much as you say, John Shaban has written some good episodes, it's kind of, this is still falling into the same traps he seems to keep falling into, isn't it?
I don't think this is a bad episode at all.
No.
I think it has problems and could have done with another rewrite.
Mm. Oh, no, I'm not going to say it, but I'm still saying that it's much like all the ethnic minority stuff, is he's not quite grasped what he's doing.
Yeah.
This is better.
It is better than that, but it's still the idea of even saying, I've done all this research into autism, or I think he wrote El Mundo Hero, didn't he?
Yeah.
So all this research into Mexican immigrants, it's still not something he's experienced. Or he can never have the in-depth knowledge that you would need to write about this sensitively.
No, and again, it's just his perspective on it is, as we said of Mulder Hero, it's the aspiration to being a telenovela, and you don't actually get telenovelas either, dude.
Mm.
I'm not saying you can't try this, but you need to go further than you have done. And yeah, but I mean, I would agree that this is, as you said though, for all its problems, it's a devastatingly effective episode. It just feels like it could have stuck the landing with a bit more work.
It definitely falls apart, like maybe in its last quarter.
Yeah, it's as soon as Nurse Innes is revealed to be the killer, it just collapses. Because, like, Harold dies off screen, which feels really weird.
Yeah. It's after all the sad things have happened to Harold as well, because the bit where he sees Angie's ghost is devastating.
Yeah. And it feels really odd to say, we found him in an alleyway 2 blocks away. It's like, what? How? What?
Mm.
This was our equivalent to Roland, and Roland got a better send-off than this guy. I mean, Roland might have been possessed by his brother, but that's a...
Roland's send-off is quite dark.
It is quite, well, potentially dark. You can interpret it either way. There's enough give to have the dark reading and the light reading on there.
Mm.
This is very much a case of, Harold has died and Scully's next. Clyde Ruckman, can we have a word?
Clyde Bruckman said that Scully was going to live forever.
She did.
Or rather, he said that she was not going to die, so we can all hold that to heart.
We'll hold that to heart. So, I mean, it's going to sort of undercut any tension going forward, isn't it?
Can't die, Clive said so.
I mean, we do know the notes that this was actually not meant to be true. But we don't know. We know Gillian Anderson is going to be an absolute mainstay of the series and be in more episodes than David Duchovny ultimately, so there's that.
She can't die.
She can't die.
Unless it's going to be her identical twin who's also called Dana Scully going forward.
It's an alien bounty hunter, or just another shapeshifter has taken over. I mean...
I like to think it is the alien bounty hunter the whole time as well.
That'd be great,
That's going to be our season 11 reveal.
What a massive conspiracy twist it would be is that Scully has been an alien bounty hunter the entire time, and basically all the stuff that Mulder's seeing off screen, she's actually going off and killing people while he can't see them.
Can we imagine this? This is like the absolute reverse to finding the guy in the shower in Dallas.
Yes.
This is your absolute as polar opposite as we can get in this, as Scully's been dead the entire time.
Yep. The first scene of walking to the FBI, not even then. Alas, I think there's unfortunately a few too many weird elements that aren't going to work if we sort of adopt that. We're pretty sure this is actually Scully.
This is like when we watched Game of Thrones and you thought that everyone was a many-faced man after a point.
Wouldn't that have been such a great reveal at the end? Wait a minute, if you're Draken Nagar, and you're Draken Nagar, and you're Draken Nagar, then who's flying the plane? Still not entirely sure what that's from, but I like it. And anyway, for all listeners who watched the end of Game of Thrones, tell me that wouldn't have been a better final scene than the one we got.
You were never going to get that for a final scene.
I know, but wouldn't it have been better?
I don't think anyone could argue with that.
I wouldn't even come back so bad. Anyway, Elegy, sorry. But yeah, Mulder's uncharacteristically not quippy in this episode, I feel.
How can you make quips around this?
Well, given his complete bluntness in other situations, because we've done this a few times, the fact that Mulder can be the most empathetic person in the world and just stand up in front of people and say the worst thing ever.
I do think, however, that it's, again, I keep comparing this one to Roland. It's how good Mulder is with Roland, how understanding, helping him pick a shirt, playing with the little UFO toy with him and things. He doesn't show that level of care with dealing with Harold, who is a very similar character to Roland.
Yes, it's the absolute implication that Mulder does understand what this medical condition and therefore how to actually talk to people in it. And it's just gone in this
Well,
one.
you think he would? He's pretty good at talking with kids and stuff because, again, he's a trained psychologist.
Yeah. But in terms of the whole, he can also say the wrong thing at the wrong time, is Shadows is one of the ones that comes up on Tumblr a lot. When he's trying to talk to the sheriff about shapeshifters, and I've forgotten his name, sorry, but Hawk from Twin Peaks just says, Agent Mulder, this is a funeral.
Yeah.
And Mulder just looks, just sort of, just phases Mulder completely.
Well, you kind of see that in this one, is the scene where they're questioning Harold in the police station, and it's both Mulder and the detective are just doing this atrociously, and the attorney just keeps saying, if you keep this up, we're stopping this right now.
Well, she just say, you're not allowed to say these things to him, and the officer just goes straight into it.
Yeah, which again, Harold is clearly not in a good place to begin with, but the second they start mentioning, particularly Mulder mentioning ghosts and things, he just goes into full meltdown.
Yeah. And you would, because, I mean, if you have difficulty expressing yourself at the best of times, and you're talking about a phenomenon that not everyone believes in, that's really not going to do any favours.
But also something is, you're thinking that Harold is very childlike when Angie's dealing with... Angie actually deals with him really well in the episode, of how to talk to him and how to calm him down. But think of a scared little kid, for example, if you started talking to them about ghosts.
Exactly.
Is you just make them more frightened.
And that's a good point you brought up, though, because it is part of what makes the episode sad, is that relationship between Harold and Angie is really just meaningful and really sort of warm.
It's at the start is Angie loses patience with him a bit, sees that Harold gets more upset and manages to calm him down. Yeah. Is Angie's not perfect, but Angie understands kind of how to speak to him and how to make him feel comfortable. Which is why it's even worse when Angie has his heart attack and Harold's lost this friend that really gets him.
Yeah. And it's, again, that's really good. It's just, there's other bits of it that aren't. And I think you've got an interesting problem with bowling scores, which... Was it that hard to research bowling scores?
I can't remember which one it is, but it's the maximum amount you can get in a single round in bowling is 30. Yeah?
Okay, something like that.
Yeah, there's one of the scores that Harold keeps repeating, which has a gap of about 34 between two numbers. And it's like, oh, come on, guys.
John Shaban, you've truly done bowling. It's like one of the American pastimes, as far as Big Lebowski indicates to me.
I've got to admit, we have bowling alleys in the UK. It's not a really big thing. It's more of a kid's birthday party thing.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you watch The Big Lebowski and you get an insight into this sort of aspect of American culture that does not translate over to the side of the Atlantic.
Yeah, I think I might have been once or twice when I was a very little kid. I probably haven't been bowling in almost 30 years.
We should go bowling. But yeah, the way Americans treat bowling is quite different to how we treat bowling. As you said, it's like, it's the kid's birthday party thing.
Yeah, very, very little kids usually at a birthday party, pre-teens.
We're going to say this, and the one near us is going to probably turn out to be like a teen hangout or something.
I feel that for research purposes, we should go to that one. I mean, it's like down the road and we've never been to it. That's how it really isn't a UK pastime.
True. I mean, we could do Big Lewbowski cosplay or something, or just get into character. I am the Jesus.
Yeah, I was just thinking I want to be the Jesus.
You probably don't actually want to be the Jesus because you actually got the terrible backstory.
True.
Yeah, don't be him. You could be the dude or Walter or
But you don't get to say the line if you're anyone else.
This has been Things Are Getting Strange, the Big Lewbowski podcast.
If people haven't watched Big Lewbowski right now, they really should.
True. Although, as an aside, I will make the point that I've experienced this, Kim has experienced this, I've never quite understood what to attribute this to, but if you haven't watched The Big Lewbowski, watch The Big Lewbowski, leave it for like a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month, and then watch it again. And I say this because, well, whatever you experienced the first time through, you're likely not going to find it very funny. And then you watch it the second time, and it's one of the funniest things you've ever seen. And I don't quite understand how it does this. It's very strange.
Yeah, someone told me the same thing. Is I watched it the first time, didn't get the fuss.
No.
You watch it the second time, it's magnificent.
Yeah, and it just... I mean, and the other thing about it is that I honestly did not understand the story the first time through. I had no idea what was going on in any part of that film. And the second time through, it goes, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I understand exactly what's going on. I don't know what it is, but yeah, if you watch The Big Lebowski, you got to watch it twice, and the first time doesn't count.
But yeah, The Big Lebowski is largely where my knowledge of bowling comes from. Between the Big Lewbowski and, I think, Homer Simpson.
Elegy, the depressing episode. Oh, I don't know. So yeah, we've got the bowling scores are wrong, and I don't know. I do feel like in some ways the episode is too short. There's some bits of it that you could have padded out. I mean, it's like Harold's little hidey hole has got all the score sheets up on the wall, and he sort of memorized every one of them. And all the victims are people he's taken a fancy to coming into the bowling alley. It feels like it's been cut down from something a lot longer, like there was like a film that this was actually the plot of, and basically you've got the edited highlights ultimately in this. I mean, kind of the inverse of what we got with Final Destination, where that was an episode blown up into a full feature-length film.
Yeah. I guess you'd have the idea that Harold's scorecards would be your first sting, whereby you'll realise there's still a third of the movie left and Harold can't be the killer.
Yeah, and they're kind of just an incidental thing, but I think that's a good point. I think they were introduced too late, really.
Yeah.
And again, I don't understand who carved She Is Me into the bowling alley and stuff like that. I'm realising now, as also in reflection, which is probably why we keep going to such tangents, is again, this is one of those episodes where when you get down to it, not much actually happens. There's 45 minutes of screen time, but in terms of stuff to actually discuss, it's kind of evaporative.
It's true, and all the deaths occur off screen as well.
Yeah.
You don't have... Even Angie's heart attack is off screen.
Yeah. Well, again, that sort of feeds into the whole Harold, I think, should have been on screen. I mean, I know it's just going to be distressing, but it's really odd to have Mulder walk in and say, yeah, we found his body.
Mm. But I think every girl is off screen, because even when Scully has a vision, Mulder runs in and says, hey, you'll never guess what, we found another dead body, pretty much. We don't see a single person actually get murdered in the course of this.
We're not bloodthirsty people who say we want to see that. It just feels really odd that the X-Files usually does depict the moment of murder. They usually don't shy away from that bit.
Yeah, obviously not too graphic, because this was still kind of like...
Network TV.
But you would have the... let's go with Darkness Falls, the green glow descending on someone and a scream.
Yeah. I was actually... The one that kept coming to mind was Too Shy. The sex worker when he drags off into the alleyway.
And you also get Too Shy with the car, where he kind of vomits over her and then you just see the car shaking a bit.
Yeah.
You know, it's clear what's gone on. It's velociraptors attacking people.
Yeah.
But...
This is uncharacteristically evasive.
Mm.
I'm not... and Scully's cancer, again, is... It's tied into the conspiracy in a few places, we know, for definite. I mean, the cause of it is something conspiracy-related. Cancer Man understands that she's got it and is at least telling Skinner he can do something about it. And it's present in this episode, but again, we can't... It's difficult to talk about it. It's just symptoms are getting worse.
Well, and now you've got the impression, and it's the kind of psychological impact it has on Scully as well, is Scully found out she had cancer because Lena Betts made a throwaway line.
Yeah.
And similar in this one, she sees a vision of a girl, and then very close afterwards, Mulder comes in and says, hey, did you know everybody who's had visions of girls is about to die? Did you know that, Scully? Ha ha, did you know that? Which, of course, Mulder has no idea that Scully has seen one. But at the same time, it must be that fear for Scully of, oh hell, supernatural things in my line of work have just told me that I'm dying now.
I mean, does he actually even grapple with that when she admits to him at the end?
He just gets a bit upset at her, mainly because of the fact that she will not accept what she's seen as supernatural.
Yeah.
As usual with Mulder, of the, oh, why can't you just believe?
But surely as well, Mulder, empathy, and I'm going to say the Mulder of Memento Mori. Mulder of Memento Mori, where are you? Because as soon as Scully said she saw a vision of the dying girl, she'd be able to put two and two together of what that means. And he doesn't.
It's not as sensitive as in Memento Mori, but I'm guessing we're going on the same level as the bit which I really like where Scully point blank says, Mulder, I have cancer, it's not going to get better.
Yeah.
And Mulder just essentially plays up his, oh, what the hell, I can't believe that, we've got to find something.
Yeah.
Is the optimism of Mulder versus the Scully's clinical nature. But we don't have it here. Scully's seen something she can't explain. It's terrified her. She's worried about her mentality, and we don't have that Mulder positivity on the other side.
No. And that's weird. I mean, I also going to make the point of, we've talked about it a lot for this season, and we've talked about it a lot for all the X-Files seasons, but Scully's cancer has really focused this down of what is going on with the arcing plot. And again, it's that fact we had those weeks where basically nothing happened with this at all. It wasn't even an offhand mention. And now we explicitly have had 2 episodes in quick succession which are all about it. Admittedly, one of those was a cover for her going off to film something else.
Yeah.
But this one is very much a case of it's tied into it. And it begs the question of, was this episode written specifically to fill this slot, or was it amended at any point to make it fit better with where it is? I'm just kind of getting at, it seems like my problem with Paper Heart's placement, not the episode content, but just where it occurs in the sequence. And there's been a few other ones.
I think this one has to be here, though. It's
it
the
does.
escalation.
Yeah, but I think that's interesting that one can only fit here, whereas you've got other episodes that would fit better elsewhere.
If we're buying now that if Mulder's theory about the visions is correct and Scully is dying, this has to be close to the end of her cancer plot.
Yeah.
Is because Scully's either got to get better or die at this point.
Yeah. And we're taking Clive Bruckman on his word that the episode, scenario B isn't going to happen, so she's got to get better somehow. Not sure how yet. Do you have anything else about this episode, or shall we go back to Big Lewbowski?
No, I think we should go back to Big Lewbowski, to be honest. I think you've covered everything. It's like you say, it's a distressing episode. It's a very memorable episode, but I think we've covered everything that really happened in it.
Yeah. So, next week, we have Demons, another episode where I literally cannot remember what happens in it.
Oh, I can.
Okay, that's good. We'll see how this stacks up, because I think when we had a thing many years ago when basically we watched the Exiles episode and then we just lopped out anything we didn't like out of the running order.
My director's cut.
Your director's cut. And Demons, neither of us had, I don't think it was even a debate, was it? Case of Demons, now go to it.
To be fair, after about season 5, I think I started cutting off a lot of the conspiracy episodes too.
Well, yeah, after season 5, it got a lot more brutal with what got in and got out. But Demons, I remember watching it, and I remember the significant part of Demons. Can't fly from remember what happens. And why should I get. And the other one, and I'm going to try and do this because I cannot, is Gethsemane? Is that right?
Gethsemane. It's the garden in the Bible, I think, where Jesus is captured before he's executed.
Well, I know that bit. I just can't pronounce it. I was trying to Gethsemane. Anyway, that will bring us to the end of season 4. Hooray! And yeah, so next week we'll have to get into what we thought of the season overall on top of both episodes.
I'll try and get people to kind of weigh in on social media to see what everyone else thinks too.
I've got to say, unless Demons and Gethsemane really sort of pull some dramatic works, and given I can't remember Demons, I'm not sure it's going to do it. Season 4 has not been as good as I remember it being.
Back when I was talking to people about their favourite parts of season 3, right at the start of this, someone did comment on the fact that they thought that season 4 had the biggest peaks and troughs. And I'm inclined to believe with them based on what we've seen.
I can see that.
The good episodes are excellent still, but...
The craters are just burrowing.
On the other end of the scale, you have El Mundo Guerra.
Also, some of the most disappointing conspiracy episodes, because again, you've got Tunguska, which is great, and then Terma, which... What even happened there? Mm-hmm. But anyway, that's a conversation for next week. In the meantime, if you'd like to get hold of us, our email address is thingsargettingstrange42@gmail.com.
You can also find us on social media. On Twitter and Tumblr, we are GetStrange42. On Mastodon, we are at GetStrange42 at universedon.com. And on Facebook, you can find us by searching for Things Are Getting Strange, an X-Files Rewatch podcast. If you're not sick of hearing my voice by now, I also stream on Twitch. It's 3 times a week, although we're not going to have an episode this Saturday because we have guests. Usually it is Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. BST or Saturday at 5 p.m. BST. At the moment, I'm playing One Piece Odyssey on the PlayStation 5.
We have a Patreon, patreon.com/thingsargettingstrange, where our X-Files Let's Play will eventually sit pride of place when we actually get it finished. The aforementioned family visit is making things complicated, but once our guests have departed, we will be able to have much more smooth sailing.
Yeah, we do need to get back to re-recording that. We'll try to do so as soon as possible. Our Patreon has 3 tiers, just so you're aware. They're all at different prices, but if you back us at any level, you will have access to the Let's Play and any future special things we do.
This will include the other game, the books, the comics, the trading card game, which, if it's not a Yu-Gi-Oh-like affair, I will be immensely disappointed, but not hugely surprised, must be said. We are going to look for X-Files board games, because I don't know offhand if they exist.
I'm sure there is a deck building one, but...
Yeah.
It was from a long time ago.
I want the X-Files branded Monopoly or something. Something weird like that.
I'll make you one, Nick.
I know. I'm sure they do other branded versions of Monopoly. It'd be kind of funny to watch. So is Mulder's office like Old Kent Road or something?
I'm trying to think what the high value place will be. Surely it'll be wherever the Syndicate are based.
Well, that'll be whatever that street in New York is.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the Park Avenue or something, isn't it? It's 4th or 5th. I can't remember which avenues it is. The one's either side of Central Park.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those. At least it's implied to be.
Oh, fair enough.
You have Mulder's office and Skinner's office. So if it's Skinner's office and you get a cigarette as a playing piece, you just have to live there.
You have Max Fenwick's trailer.
Yeah, you have the Lone Gunman publishing
Lone Gunman, yeah.
Scully's apartment.
You're probably running out of places very shortly. I'm not sure you can get full Monopoly board so far.
But then you extend out to there's 11 seasons and 2 movies. There's got to be enough in there somewhere.
Yeah, okay. I'll have a look.
Okay. Thank you all for listening, and until next week, please remember...
A man digs a hole, he risks falling into it.